So good morning, everyone. Welcome to SmartBear's webinar. My name is Damien Walsh, here waving my hand. And we've got Dermot.
Hi, everyone.
Good morning, Dermot. How are you?
I'm good.
So before we start into our kind of webinar, and what I'll do is I'll share my screen with everyone. Just bear me a second. Let's see if I can get this up. So everyone can see my screen. So can you see my screen, everyone?
I can indeed. Well, I can.
You can. So if everyone can let us know whether you can hear us okay and whether you can see our screen.
Yeah. So feedback, the best place for feedback, I think, is in the chat window.
Yeah.
And if you've got any questions, actual questions for us to answer, do pop them into the Q&A box, because that's really the best place for tracking questions and answers.
Yeah, and usually these kind of discussion-based kind of sessions are, kind of to get people interacting as well.
Exactly.
So, we do have quite a lot of people on the call today, so I can see from the list here. And if people can let us know where you're calling in from, because usually we have a diverse audience and people from different locations. So just to give you a bit of background, we are based in the west of Ireland. Not too bad today, Dermot.
Indeed, it's dry, it's chilly, there's a little nip in the air.
Yeah, it's getting close to winter time now, so
yeah.
But if people can let us know where you're calling in from, just to get things kicked off and see who's around. We might even be able to kind of do a bit of in the lingo. So
We'll see.
Are we pushing it there? Are we? But as I says, everyone, today we're going to talk about the developer talent gap, and you talk about today's kind of environments. There's always going to be development of some sort, and as we get into this session, we're going to talk about how teams can bridge the gap, between what developers do and what other parts of the organization are doing, from testing as well. There's always going to be different trends, different technologies, different tools, all that kind of stuff that are going to come up that are going to be a kind of a grey line between who used them and when they use them. And we're seeing that quite a lot now, especially in a very kind of, again, a diverse culture, and also a fast-moving, more than 2018. Software itself is flying by.
Absolutely.
And is to be able to keep up with that kind of the trends and technologies and the fast-paced way of life as a developer, or as part of the software development life cycle. All right. As I says, just by way of introduction, so that's myself, Damien, and also Dermot here. So
we waved already.
I need to get a black and white picture, I think.
Oh yeah,
it's definitely good. But if we look at kind of just as part of the intro, and kind of adding to what I just talked about, if you look at kind of where we're at in terms of sitting in the culture of chaos. Now, chaos is a big word.
It is.
It's a very controversial word, I would say sometimes. But if you look at kind of technology and this disruptions that are happening in technology, a lot of things now are changing the way we do things. Mm-hmm. I even talking to someone there yesterday about smart homes. How those things work, how those things impact how we develop our application, how people perceive our tools, our software nowadays. Being able to formalize kind of testing cycles, being able to formalize ways around things, being able to successfully navigate through different obstacles. These are all the different words that I'm bringing out here, but it's hard to kind of see and see the end of the tunnel, so to speak.
There's a lot of factors, and chaos, it's a very big word, as we said, but maybe really what it is, like you said, disruption. And I think we're moving to a place where we're considering disruption to be a good thing for software, because it mixes things up. It adds new opportunities for the developer and also for the user. And a lot of this is user focused as well.
Yeah.
So, the idea being that you're getting more feedback from your user, more what the user wants, or you try and absorb it and try and adapt.
Well, isn't it a case as well that when you go out with an idea of a piece of software that you want to disrupt the market.
Exactly.
You know, if you cannot disrupt the market, then your software isn't going to be successful.
Exactly. So
that's where it's coming from.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a case of looking at the world, because, you know, as you said, Dermot, customer expectations now are beyond astronomical.
Indeed. And you know, because of the levels of engagement that new technology allows for, they want more, they expect more. And you know, that's good on very many levels, because it gives us feedback. It gives developers feedback, and it allows to refine.
Yeah, exactly. And if you look at if we break it down into kind of different sections of chaos, so to speak, you know, we talked about dynamic expectations, really, you know, where you know, customers are expecting you to integrate in with, you know, X, Y, and Z. So Facebook integrates in with Instagram, integrates in with Twitter, and all these kind of, you know, it's funny, like I'm just taking Facebook as one thing there. Maybe I've bought a pair of trainers or runners, or whatever you want to call them, and all of a sudden I've got this information in my application, you know, saying, promoting what other runners are out there. Exactly. You know, and we'll get into kind of AI and all that kind of stuff down the line. But, you know, it is this, you know, not just the software, but people nowadays are also, you know, living in a fast-paced world. You know, and people now don't tend to book holidays or don't tend to book hotels on their laptops, on their big machines. Mm-hmm. They're doing it on their mobile devices.
Absolutely.
So it's that whole thing where, you know, you look at the customer, the communities, like, you know, you're building communities even around software. You know, we ourselves have got our own community of end users, but the services as well. Like, you know, if you look at the 3 or 5 different topics there: customers, communities, services, workforce, and the social influence. Mm-hmm. And that's where the dynamic expectations come across. If you look at those 5 key points, you know, it's always kind of part of the communities forming the services, better services that provide, and also being able to kind of build the workforce across different networks and all that kind of stuff. And it all, I suppose, comes back around again in a full circle.
Exactly, yes.
As I said, guys, don't be afraid to chime in as you go along. Again, use the chat or use the Q&A if you want. We talked about Internet of Things already, and this 5, 6, 7 years ago?
Yeah, it
more?
Probably around that. I'm trying to think when my first smart device was coming in. It would have been around 10 years ago, actually. I was looking at smart routers for what was it? Z-Wave.
Okay, devices. There you go. So, yeah. So it has been around quite a long time, and now we've advanced into more wearables, smartphones, smart homes, which I talked about, smart cars, connected cars. Absolutely. You know, you look at all these kind of cars now that are out there. You know, these brand new 2018 cars, and they talk to you. They tell you that Dermot is ringing you to say, I've got food on the table, all that kind of stuff. I've been able to tell you where there's a good parking spot, even driving for you. So these, you know, Tesla is also kind of coming up with these, you know, funky ways of designing their cars as well. So all these Internet of Things are driving how our software is also developed, and not just how it integrates in with these kind of wearables or these kind of all this connected infrastructure. It's also kind of gearing us towards how we develop more faster, more robustly, you know, like with AI, like with more automated CI/CD environments, all that kind of stuff. So it is getting to a point where, you know, now we've got a what's the word for it? Where it's all wearables. There's a whole lot of wearables online, or a whole lot of wearables available to you in smartphones. So there's everyone's got, like, you know, if you were to say that 6, 7 years ago, there wouldn't be that many wearables nowadays.
Absolutely.
So the Internet of Things is another thing that's helping, and I think one thing there that I find very useful is this whole thing of a smart city. You know, how soon before everybody's going to be, you know, a smart city, and you know, you're going to be, you know, going to be ordering very quickly. And this again comes back from AI, and we'll talk about that again. But if you look at you know, takeaway stores, like takeaway chains, where they're now get less and less, face to face. It's more on you come in there and you order on the big screen there, and then you go up and collect your order. And again, based on that, then they'll give you the top 5 kind of meals of the day or whatever. Like, so it's building out that and using that in everyday life as well.
Absolutely.
And then newer, faster technologies. So there's a whole load of advancements over the last decade that make sure that companies who are developing software need to be engaged. Like, you look at, if you're working with APIs, this whole open API specification, for people that are familiar with APIs, we're standardizing the way you develop software, because when you're developing newer, faster technologies, the whole idea here is that it could get lost very, very quickly, and quality of software could be reduced very quickly. So being able to kind of change the rules of engagement across many companies, having more process-driven development and all that kind of stuff is important. PDD, process-driven development.
I think you should copyright that. Yeah.
You heard it here first, folks. But yeah, look at it. It is a case of there's new ways to connect. There's new ways to visualize, provide product services, forcing companies to adapt and invest quickly to stay relevant in today's marketplace. And that is going to be always the case, where you're going around, you're pulling your hair out, you're trying to find a quick way to do a quick fix for a certain feature or product, attribute, and all that kind of stuff. And it's important to kind of make sure that when you're in a development, when you're trying to bridge that gap between developers and testers and all that kind of stuff, is that you're all in the same kind of working towards the same goal, making sure that expectations are set from an end user point of view, making sure that you're working with different third-party systems, and that you're developing faster, quicker, and high quality software.
Yeah, because it becomes extremely problematic when everybody has a different idea of what the end product should be.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the way it kind of works. And if we start off, so we've got a few polls going on here today, and it's to kind of get people interacting, because there's nothing worse than just sitting there and listening to myself and Dermot ramble on. But what we're going to do is we're going to set you guys a little bit of a task here. So what is your role in your company today? What do you do? So again, are you a developer? Are you QA engineer, testers, development manager, DevOps? Again, DevOps is a kind of has taken a leaps and bounds over last year. I think a lot more new positions in terms of DevOps, network admin, DevOps engineers, all that kind of stuff. And it's important to kind of see who's out there, because if we start talking about development and Git and Mercurial and IDEs and all that kind of stuff, and we've got an audience of testers, then maybe we need to tailor a little bit more. So again, this will give us another idea of who. So again, we know where you're from. We won't ask for your bank details just yet. Not yet. But if you can keep that coming in for a few more minutes. And like as I says, the whole idea here is that is to bridge, if you think about the chaos and being able to bridge that gap, because with kind of this chaos comes some level of calmness. And is it a case that we need to have new technologies? Is it a case that we need to have new methodologies in terms of we've got some DevOps engineers in the line. So is it a case that we need to move from waterfall to agile or to DevOps, to bridge that gap, to bridge that talent gap? Because you look at 10, 15 years ago, there was, there wasn't as many IT jobs in the world. And now all of a sudden there's a shortage of skills, developers, testers, all that kind of stuff. So it's being able to kind of, get newer people up to speed on that and be able to kind of get them into a role of a developer tester, and that's where DevOps, I think for me, is going. Is that grey line between developers and testers. But thank you very much, everyone, for that. And if we can maybe just give you a bit of update. So again, very little between developers and testers. We have a dev managers on the line. We have also QA managers, DevOps, and other. So welcome other as well. So I had a radio voice there, Dermot.
Yeah, gives a very good reference.
But yeah, thanks very much for that, everyone. So if we look at continue on from there, and if you look at kind of from that chaos, how do we manage that? So we talked about kind of, and if you think about the dynamic, interaction expectations, the whole thing of IoT, the whole thing of being able to kind of work with newer, faster technologies. The important thing here is to kind of see what's out there in the market. There's a new continuous integration, continuous deployment environments or tools available for you all the time. There's new kind of ways of delivering software very, very quickly. Here locally at SmartBear, we're using a certain product like Docker, and we've moved over to a different product to kind of get our DevOps cycles going on very quickly. And people and companies, are always looking at new technologies. If we don't talk to one person day in, day out that isn't looking for new technology, I'll probably fall on the floor. Yeah. So we are looking at that all the time.
Absolutely. It comes up all the time. Every single in customer engagement, it's, topic number one, or at least in the top 5.
Yeah, and as a developer or as a tester, or anybody in software knows, it's not an industry that stays static for very long. And we'll talk a little bit about progressive web apps and all that kind of stuff as we get into it. But it's not an industry that stays static. There's always something new. There's always a new idea coming out, a new terminology, a new methodology, and new, as I said, new technologies. The world wouldn't be where it is today if we hadn't entrepreneurs or people come up with good ideas to develop that. And especially now with the whole idea of IoT and especially smartphones, we look at kind of the younger generation. We look at our kids, and they are now using these tablets and these mobile devices to understand how reading happens, how you do your maths, how you listen to songs, how you learn how to talk, even. So these are all kind of ways of where not just the software is changing, but the world as we know it is changing, and software needs to keep up with the ever expectations of us humans.
Absolutely.
And then the methodologies. So the methodologies are always going to be an important part. Methodologies, processes, either are really. There still is that kind of waterfall mentality in organizations, and that's to be expected. You're going to be siloed into your development, your test, and your performance, and you need to kind of do one before you can move on to the other, and that's always going to be the case. And some organizations you cannot change, no matter how hard you try. But again, is the change worth it in the end in terms of delivering a top of the range product to your end users? Because if you don't, then chances are your end user aren't going to use the application. I say this time and time again, when you download an application from Google Play Store or iTunes or whatever, and just say it opens up and then all of a sudden I get an error message. What are the chances you're going to not use that again? Dermot, you probably will try and make sure and probably debug it or something like that, would you?
I am an engineer, but your average user is not going to say, "Oh, I'll keep at it until it works." They'll just remove it and try something else.
They'll delete it. If it's a case of an application that I want to be able to add, and I open up the application and I can add 1 + 1, then I've set the expectation. The expectation is there that when I download it, I can add. Yeah. So, as I said, again, if I want to add, multiply, and divide, and I only do add, then my expectations are changing, and I won't use that. So that's just one example. But yeah, look, at waterfall is certainly one thing there. Agile and DevOps, for me, are kind of another great area. We're talking a lot more about DevOps in our day-to-day conversations, especially here in SmartBear, and a lot more. And I know there's some DevOps engineers on the line, and that's becoming quite a common occurrence now, especially, as I says, with software being built faster, quicker, and we need to kind of make sure we're not sacrificing the quality of the software as well. So new methodologies need to embrace the whole world and change, and also with those new technologies, with those new methodologies, we're kind of reducing the amount of chaos in our world, but also kind of ensuring the talent we have in the organization understands what needs to be done and who to work with and how to work with it. So again, I suppose that the whole saying is that work smarter, not faster. And if you can work smarter, then obviously you're going to work faster as well with the different technologies and methodologies out there.
Or at the very least, work happier.
Well, that's another thing.
Yeah.
As it says, I would prefer to see manage the happiness by bridging the gap. Definitely. But again, in order to have happiness, you need to drive some sort of chaos in there. You need to be some level of
dynamism.
That's a nice word. I like that. So let's ask another question. So does your product offer any of the below technologies for your users? We talked about briefly in the intro. So artificial intelligence, low code platforms. So what I mean by low code platforms is you're doing more kind of recording or you're doing more object moving. So again, I've looked at developing a mobile application. I'm not a big scripter, not a big coder or whatever you want to call it. But again, I'll drag my applications using certain off-the-shelf products and build my mobile, my native or my hybrid application. So again, that's what I mean by low-level platforms. And we also briefly touched on it there, was around progressive web applications. So again, I'm liking this poll, Dermot. It's fairly neck and neck here. Absolutely. So, and just as I say it, it's gone back down again. So yeah, I think artificial intelligence, for me personally anyways, is something that is the world quite ready for. We talk about it. We've talked about DevOps for years and years and years. But it's only now, for me anyways, and I don't know about you, Jeremy, but only me in the last 18 months that we're seeing a lot more prominence around DevOps.
Yeah.
Even though I've talked to people that said, we've been doing DevOps for the last 10 or 15 years. But, truly DevOps in terms of the whole cycle of development, test, and performance, and using that performance output back into the development cycle again is important.
Yeah.
All right. So it looks like the majority of people here are using progressive web applications.
Very interesting.
Very interesting. So that's good. So if we want to kill that there now, and if we look at so if we take these three areas, artificial intelligence, low-code platforms, and again, it's building the story for you. It's understanding how we are bridging that gap. Remember that's the key thing again is bridging that gap, whether you're a developer, whether you're a tester. How do we bridge the communication gap even between those two people, or those two kind of areas, developers and testers? That's all. That's again a subject for another day in terms of communication and working together as a unit in terms of the developer and testers. But if we look at kind of the rise of artificial intelligence use cases, so like the rise of Terminator or something like that. You see AI, but
the rise of Skynet. Yes,
rise of Skynet.
A little unsettling, but we'll try and steer clear of the homicidal robots.
Exactly. That's hopefully way down the line. But yeah, look at we've got it. Like I've talked about, connected cars, and you're driving on the road and you say, look at ring Dermot, and all of a sudden Dermot's on the phone. And then all of a sudden we'll see Dermot on a phone in a video conference. This is where it's going. It's going to pop up, and I can see pictures of Back to the Future and all that kind of stuff. And there's a few other films out there that I could refer to. But that's the way AI is going. It's been able to kind of find or present the end user with what they want before they know it themselves.
Yeah.
So it's like future prediction, and being able to go work with that. So again, you chose Terminator. Why don't you look at Alien, for example?
Indeed.
So again, it's been able to kind of, and as I said to you before, Facebook, I bought a pair of runners, and then all of a sudden, within 30 seconds, I've got an ad on my Facebook page saying, here, Damien, here's another pair of runners that you might be interested in. A gold pair with diamonds.
Because, well, that would match your existing pair, wouldn't it?
The only reason I said that is because I saw a program last night about a gold pair, a blue pair of runners with diamonds in them worth 4 million. So I'm not going to buy them.
Are you sure?
No.
Okay.
I'll leave that for
not
another
this
day.
week.
But AI, I suppose, versus the kind of the clever algorithms, there's two school of thoughts here. Like AI, I don't know if many people have, we saw some people have developed applications with AI, but again, there's that still uncertainty or unknown quantity around AI, and it's always going to be a case that, how far are we going to go? And I know in the testing circles, we're not quite there yet in terms of the technology, in terms of testing that. So I will be curious to see how things go with this in the future.
And also AI itself is a moving target. I mean, there's this thing called the AI effect, where things that we would have traditionally considered to be artificial intelligence are no longer considered artificial intelligence just because we've achieved them. So certain things like learning heuristics, or even some people don't recognize OCR as an AI function, but it's still an AI function. So you've got aspects of AI which are now ubiquitous, which people kind of say, oh, but that's not AI. So yeah, we've got this.
You're right, Dermot. I think you're right. In terms of AI and OCR, even though OCR is an old technology,
it's definitely artificial intelligence.
It's still being used. Traditionally we'll map a photo to a name, whatever, but now, because of this whole AI and I suppose machine learning comes hand in hand with AI, we've now got this. Need I refer to another movie, Matrix?
Go for it. Yes.
Neo is it?
Neo, yes.
Again, we're getting into that era again of how do we get out of that? Because that this whole AI could well bring us back into the whole era of chaos. Are we just tipping? Are we just getting set? Are we just really just realizing that we're not really in chaos just yet?
Yeah,
we're building up towards it.
I suppose what the chaos there represents is the sheer number of input that this new technology like artificial intelligence gives us. So you've got AI algorithms providing, in your case, your shopping habits. What do we do with that information? And if it's just landing up in our inbox, that is chaotic. So we have to figure out what to do with them. It
is. And does that come back then to kind of another thing is big analytics or big data and all that kind of stuff. So it is kind of a world where, this whole AI, I suppose, movement, you're going to see a lot more of it. I know only, I think, was it 20% of the audience here are using AI as their application base. I wouldn't be surprised to see that double in the next year or so.
Yeah. But on a side topic, we've cited 2 movies now, and they're both dystopias. We got to think about a utopia that uses artificial intelligence. So
yes, I'll let you think on that.
Actually, if any of the applicants have a suggestion, fire it into the chat.
Exactly.
No. Utopian films that feature artificial intelligence.
Ooh, that's a good question, Dermot. So development of non-technical developers. So I've never really thought about it as a non-technical developer. Obviously, I gave an example there a few minutes ago around me creating my mobile application of just dragging objects, dragging a button, calling this login, and then dragging a text box, calling username and calling a password. I could develop a login page for my hybrid application very, very quickly, without having any code at all in the background. So that's where we're going, is choosing that low-level platform. I think with the whole intro of iTunes and Apple, I think certainly brought another realm of kind of developer to the ecosystem. But again, we now have a lot more developers doing personal development, not just on their day-to-day job, but now developing their own applications. And there's a whole lot of platforms out there that help you kind of build that application. One such as you can see here, like, with the Appian and all that kind of stuff. And these are all kind of applications that help you where you you don't feel as comfortable coding or scripting as you would kind of, building up the UX side of things. And that again goes back to this whole dynamic expectation. We're spending a lot more time on the UX, on the user experience. I don't know if anybody has spent time, and please do let me know if you have been. But again, as part of your development or as part of your release cycle, as part of your regression testing, whatever you want to do, you're focusing more on the user experience. Because as I said before, if the user is not going to like the application, the layout, the flow of it, then they're not going to use it. And if you've got one user not using it and they go to their colleague and say, I'm not going to bother using it, I'm going to go back to my spreadsheets, or I'm going to go back to my Eclipse, I'm not going to bother using anymore those off-the-shelf tools, then the chances are your application is not going to be used and you're not going to be successful.
Absolutely.
So the whole thing of being able to kind of test or develop and even test your applications without having that coding experience and developer experience certainly helps in bridging that talent gap. Because if you look at it traditionally, developers will do some form of testing, be it unit testing, whatever. But the chances, but actually I might contradict myself here, the chances of a developer or a tester doing development work, probably less likely. But I think we're getting there. I think
we're moving towards a middle.
I think we're moving towards the middle. I think we are moving, definitely, especially with kind of terminology such as BDD and all that kind of stuff, like, behavior-driven development, where you're got an end user, a business analyst writing the gherkin syntax or whatever you want to do, and then being able to kind of develop the application off that and develop your testing as well off that. So it's that ease of use of that as well.
And the concept of agile teams being, collectively responsible as a team for the QA and the development. So everyone does what's necessary. So everybody rows in on whatever task is needed.
Yeah. The rise of progressive web applications. I'm getting really into this voice here now. Yeah, but if 50% of customer-facing mobile apps will be replaced by PWAs, as they call it, by 2020, and just so that you guys know, 70% of the audience, myself and Dermot are just baffled here. 70% of you are using or developing applications with PWAs. All right. So it's like a native application features where you do the ability to push notifications, where you can download, where you can work offline, where it's faster to load. That's where it's going. People want to kind of get it very quickly, upload it, work on it offline. Also, I suppose, saving resources, saving space, because no more than anybody, when you go to buy a new phone, the first thing I'll ask is, how much space have I got?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's no way I could go back to a 34 gig storage. I'm an iPhone user, but there's no way I could go back to that.
Yeah.
So, having less resource intensive applications certainly will make it easier for me, but chances are the day-to-day end user won't be thinking of that. But that's what it is. And you can't use the latest hardware technology. So, the likes of Samsung, the likes of Apple are always releasing new functions and features, face recognition, your thumbprint as for unlocking your device, all that kind of stuff. So being able to kind of integrate in with those kind of new technologies is going to be easier from a progressive web application point of view. I'd be interested to hear how, from that 70%, how you found developing and working with progressive web applications. Do you see a lot more faster development? Do you see a lot more rollout of features and functions? Do you see a lot more positive feedback from the end user? How do you see this whole web application development compared to traditional kind of, .NET, things like that. So if you can let me know if people are still there.
And getting up to speed as well, that would be interesting.
Okay, yeah, I think
to know how long it took. The complexity.
Yeah. So again, if you can let us know how you've gone with that. Yeah. Again, the whole thing here now is other kind of frameworks like React and Angular and all that kind of stuff are being developed. So these are all kind of tools and technologies and frameworks that are being worked with as well. Have we any feedback or any questions there, Dermot? I think the audience are gone very quiet.
It has gone very quiet in here. Yeah, I don't have anything right now, but
so let's take a look here as well at what do these technologies have in common. So again, AI, the whole thing with that kind of thing, the whole thing with progressive web apps and all that kind. So how do you ensure that these new technologies are successful? So if we look at kind of a graph here from a development effort and a product transformation, how do we spend more time towards building features versus bug fixing our product support? So, when you start developing the application, you're going to spend a lot of your time, creating new features. But as you slowly go down through the whole cycle of, growth and maturity and steady state, so to speak, you'll see here that the whole thing with new features become less and less, and we end up doing more and more kind of QA or bug fixes or working with product support. Yeah. So we have to test those. So again, it's as I said, it swings and roundabouts when you start going down that level of how mature the application is and how much uptake the system has when it's released as well. So let me just let's go here and ask another question here. So how much time are you spending developing new functionality versus fixing bugs? So we showed earlier on, the kind of as you go down through the different stages, but how many of you are actually spending more time developing new functionality? For example, here at SmartBear, we have releases every quarter. Some people have releases every year. So it's important to kind of understand what people are doing from that point of view.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's variable. I mean, test complete is every quarter, but then you've got things like CBT and Swagger Hub, and they're more often there every 2 weeks.
Yeah, I suppose it is the nature of the beast as well. So, as you said, Dermot, some of our SaaS-based applications will have maybe every week. So it depends, I suppose, on the application and the developers and stuff like that, and the sprint cycles. So it looks like between 20% and 40% focus on new features. So that's not bad. Mm-hmm. So we have, I suppose, if we go back here to the other screen before, so 20 to 40%. So you're probably still in the mix of getting between growth and maturity here. So probably the gap here between these two here. Mm-hmm. All right.
That's usually there's an expanse of time with any product where you're kind of hovering around the middle there.
Yeah, there's going to be a long period of time. That's where a lot of the time you will be. Mm-hmm. It's between the maturity or the growth and maturity.
Exactly.
So the promise of new software delivery cycles. So every day we look at and I've talked about before, every day we look at how we deliver our software. And, we look at kind of different methodologies. We talk about waterfall, agile, DevOps. And the whole thing here is, within a company, you might have some part of the organization doing waterfall and another part's doing DevOps. So, and also it depends on the project base. But the whole thing here now is that we are now looking or moving towards a more continuous delivery, continuous deployment environment. Everybody is doing that now, and I'd be surprised if not 90% of you guys are doing that. Mm. Everyone is doing kind of some form of CI/CD. But you also, as I said, have the legacy systems that are still doing that waterfall, and again have their entire month for development and then deploying their system as well. And but again now, because of end user expectations and requirements and the dynamic expectation is that they're still in a waterfall environment, but they have to go and deliver software every week.
Yep.
So it's getting to that stage now. Is there again Oh, there again here. You see here, I'm just going to show you here. I've lost my screen. There we go. Is again a kind of bridging the gap between the different methodologies.
Yeah.
Do we, in order to ensure that the talent gap is also in conjunction with the kind of methodology gap here as well. But again, another day for that kind of thing.
And also, like, you could have cutoffs in terms of phase. So I personally was on a project where the requirements phase was performed in a waterfall fashion, and then everything else was supposed to be agile. And there was tensions between the two. So, even across a single development cycle, you might have that disjoint.
Yeah, you're going to have at some stage, and again, it's all about buy-in from the different parts of the organization, buy-in from the management. If you're going to go down that kind of way of mixing the different methodologies in there as well.
Mm-hmm.
Cost of defects downstream are higher. So again, I think it was 20 to 40% people were between the growth and maturity side of things. If you look at kind of the cost of fixing a bug later in the life cycle, it is certainly going to increase. So to be able to kind of, first of all, test and fix your bug in the design or development phase will certainly help reduce that, $100, as they call it, or €100 as we say it here.
Yeah.
So again, the whole thing of reducing that cost will certainly help in terms of making sure that you've got a product that's reduces cost, but also return on investment, but also kind of make sure that everyone is kind of working in harmony, because developers see testers as someone that's trying to ruin their work and all that kind of stuff. So it's been able to kind of keep the two teams or the two groups working together. And defects, if they're not found earlier, can impact the larger picture of the software development life cycle. As developers, we continue to build applications. Defects can impact more than one interaction, and especially if you're interacting with different systems, but also different user scenarios as well. And we're also then increasing the complexity. Applications are becoming more and more complex, even though they're being faster developed and delivered, it's more complex as well. So this whole shift left, where we're actually, getting developers involved early on in the life cycle, making sure that they can do a bit of testing as well before they release that to the build cycle to be built, packaged up, and then tested out and monitored by the end users. It's been able to kind of move slightly to the left, find the bugs earlier on, test it out very quickly, release that to your testers to do more fine-tuning of testing as well, and then releasing that out to the big bad world. So it's this whole thing of shift left, making sure that developers are involved earlier on in the cycle from a test point of view as well, and making sure we find bugs, again, reducing cost and ensuring that we get this whole kind of faster technology out there as well. So I think have we got one final one left? We do, yeah. So one final kind of, I suppose, poll. So how do you test your features before sending your product to QA? So your teams create unit tests in your IDE, use test tools in your IDE, a QA team creates automated tests, and my team do not conduct any type of testing. Now, if I see someone that has actually said they don't conduct any type of testing,
I'd be surprised.
I'd be very surprised. So I suppose it's as we expected, especially when you're talking about developers, they are going to be doing unit testing quite a lot. And if you look at kind of the poll, and it's gone up and down between creating unit tests in your IDE and creating automated tests. There's a kind of a 60-40 split there, isn't there? So thanks very much for that. I think the whole thing here is that we can verify and validate at an early stage whether a certain function that the developer has created is working or not. So being able to kind of work across that board is important as well. All right. So thanks very much, everyone, for that. This is a common image that we see quite a lot. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, because how do you address the seemingly consistent change in requirements? And you're always going to get that, from what the conception was as to what I wanted, and what was actually finally delivered. It's always going to be different. And it's the same thing if you're building a house or anything else. Your initial plans are just a baseline. Mm-hmm. And as you get into the different sprint cycles and all that kind of stuff, the requirements slowly change until you have a tire hanging off a rope and a branch. And that's as simple as you can get, because you can spend time after time after time changing requirements, changing specification, changing the planning, changing the way the application moves, the different scenarios. But at the end of the day, we need to get software out there quickly, and the quality needs to be good. And if I was given a tire with a rope and on a branch, I'd be very, very happy with that, provided the branch was strong enough.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it functioned as I expected. So again, I'm not going to go into too much detail on it, but again, it's just to give you an idea of how much of a fast-paced environment, how many ideas are out there, and how we achieve those ideas, and how crazy they can get, especially with artificial intelligence, how crazy the expectation is, these wild requirements. And but at the end of the day, once we deliver a product that's feasible and is working correctly and functioning correctly based on similar requirements, then they should be all right. So what does it take, or why does it take so long to get features deployed? And this could be a number of things. It could be you're not doing continuous deployment. So again, you're waiting on a dev team to provide you with the package, and until that's done, then we cannot send it out to our tester to be tested against. So there's always going to be an area there of kind of contention. And like anything, as well, you've also got the whole thing with the testing bottleneck. And whether it's integration testing, whether you're waiting for access to a third-party system, or whether you're waiting for a load test to finish on different platforms and all that kind of stuff, you're still waiting for some form of testing to do before you can send that to release management and also deploy it out to production. Mm-hmm. So there's two trains of thoughts here, where the whole continuous deployment, you're waiting on one particular person or one particular group, or again, you're waiting on the testing bottleneck to be finished. And that could include your unit test, your integration test, your system test, your load test as well. Mm-hmm. And it's important to kind of make sure that you have the availability of that, and making sure that everything is running smoothly. And this is why, in this fast-paced environment, CI/CD becomes quite a more important role in the environment. And it goes back to our whole new technology, and our new methodologies, because when you introduce a CI/CD environment, methodologies need to change slightly, and also certainly knowledge of your CI/CD pipeline. Yep. So we have I think we've got about 10 minutes left. We'll just quickly show you. So if we look at the era of chaos, and some of you, if we talked about how we're developing, how we're testing our applications, a lot of you said we're working on different IDEs. And, we talked about the gray areas between developers and testers, and how this application, how if you had the two kind of the roles combined, how quickly you could get a piece of software out there, or a function out there very quickly with good quality.
Absolutely.
It's important to kind of see that. So let me show you an example. So for those of you that are not familiar, we do have a tool in SmartBear, and this is our small little plug here, to show you guys a little bit about kind of what how developers and the shift left trend is going. So test left is our kind of developer focused tool that integrates in with kind of Visual Studio, Eclipse, also in IntelliJ I have here as well. So again, what it does here, and I'm going to use Visual Studio here, it plugs in, and we have on the right hand side here, we've got our UI Spy. And our UI Spy allows us to find particular objects in the application that we want to test. Now, again, once I have that object, be it a text box, be it whatever button, it opens up the access to the properties and the controls and the methods of that control. And you can do more scripting around that. Now, as you can see in here, I've also got a few things here. So I don't know how many of you understand or have been involved in a BDD environment. So if you can, Dermot has anybody else been involved in a BDD environment or working in BDD?
Yeah, let us know in the chat. It would be good to know.
I'll wait. I'll actually continue on if not. But again, what it does here, it allows us, so again, this is the objects by here. And what it does is if I go and open up my web application here, I've got a web application, Nord's application. What it can do is it can actually allow me to go and highlight a particular control, right? And what it does is it allows me to find the particular application here, right? So if I look at kind of a button here, that's it. If I look at this, the whole web page here, what it does, it finds the actual web page here. And if I go and right click here and copy identification, I can now bring in how the object or how the application is found. So if I go here to my Visual Studio and I'll open a new file here, I'm going to use JavaScript here. So if I open up a JavaScript file, you can see here that's referencing the name of the control here. So again, you can see here it's found the URL for that. Mm-hmm. So once I have all those objects, and again, what I can do here is using the object model, what I can do here is I can copy, I've got YouTube here. If I copy the object model here and then bring it into my application, I've got all the controls in there. Oh, whoops, there we go. Let's see here. If I can copy this here. So this here, once I've copied the object model, what it's done is copied all the objects on that web page. So again, it's looking at the timeout, it's looking at the orders application, is looking at all the information in there from the application. So when I go and write my code, I don't need to have knowledge of the object.
Yeah.
I can work with that as well.
You don't have to know how it was developed.
No, you don't. And that again, comes back somewhat to low code application. Mm-hmm. Where it allows you to kind of, the developer anyways, if it's an off the shelf application, to kind of get access to those controls. And you can see here, you've got your different your properties in here for that and your different methods as well. So it allows you to kind of able to access that information very, very quickly. And once you have that then set up, then you can see here in the add, if I can find one here, you can see here in the add steps, add features, I can find one here. So again, you can see in here in the, I'm just trying to find one here now. It's gone from me, isn't it? Difficult.
It's there somewhere.
There you go.
Okay.
So if you can see here that it actually, what I've done here is I've set up my my drivers here to work with test left. But again, what it's allowing me to do is access the different applications or different objects. So again, my username, my password, and all that kind of stuff. So I can write my scripts out based off of my object model that's based again off being able to access the controls using the test left UI spy.
Okay.
So I've been able to kind of very quickly generate an automated test from objects that may or may not be in the application as of yet. Right. You can just copy the model from there.
So I suppose the alternative to that would have been, you have to, you come with maybe a BDD style script and you have to build out the definitions of all your controls using Selenium.
Exactly. Like, if you look at kind of a Gherkin syntax and, this kind of stuff here, and this is BDD we're getting into now. But again, given I've launched the orders application and I want to log in with the username and password, that's my feature file. And then my step definition then brings me closer to my automated test.
Yeah.
And then if I incorporate my my object model into that, then I've now got, so again, I can see here, given I've successfully logged on with username and password, I'm now giving them the correct information there as well. Mm-hmm. So it's building out that whole testing framework using your developer's knowledge and skills as well. So once I test that very quickly, if I find any bugs, then I'm reducing the cost of a bug as well, but also kind of bridging that gap between your developer and tester, because testers are very, very clever people. Mm-hmm. And as we said there before, they are bridging the gap between developers and testers. And certainly tools like test left will help you bridge that gap, whether you're in a BDD environment, whether you're working with developers who want to get into more testing, and using the test left GUI spy, which, works with an object recognition engine in the name mapping repository, exposing the methods and the properties of the control. You can do a lot more with that. So you can advance your automation scripts as well, because some tools out there, like our own Test Complete tool, you can develop a non-scripting test framework. But then as you get into more development, or when you get into more complex user scenarios and automation, then this is where shift left happens and allows you to kind of build out, expand out in your automation framework. All right. So just a little bit of a glimpse into kind of test left and how that flow goes and how it will work for you. So any questions? We're hitting the top. We've got about 3 or 4 minutes left. So any questions, John?
Fire off the last poll.
Fire off the last poll, yes.
But yeah, if you have any questions, just fire them into the QA box. And we'll do our best in the time remaining to answer them. Even if we don't get to them, we have all your contact details, so we can get back to you after the webinar and answer questions as well.
So anybody got any questions, any feedback?
Well, we have 2 people who came on and they told us that they hadn't experienced BDD yet.
Okay.
But the yet I find interesting.
Yes, yeah. Like there's a lot more people coming into this whole kind of trend of BDD now, especially when you're building and developing and testing more rapidly. BDD becomes quite a topical conversation.
Absolutely.
And again,
more than happy to talk about BDD.
We're more than happy to talk about BDD because we have got tools for that, hip test and other tools that can help you with that as well. But again, guys, we do appreciate your time today. I know it's hard to find an hour out of the day. Hopefully we made some sort of sense to you to help you kind of bridge that gap in the talent pool in development side of things. But if you do have any other questions, please do let us know. We're here to kind of address any questions you might have. And if you do want to talk to us further, please reach out. Dermot, anything for your end?
No, just we look forward to hearing from you in future webinars, or even on personalized demos if you want to look at some of our applications.
Yeah, I think so. Just from the object spy point of view, so we've built the object spy from our object recognition engine inside of Test Complete, which is our function UI automation tool, and it works like it doesn't use XY coordinates, it doesn't use image-based testing. It uses the actual control, as I said, the control name. So, for example, in the if I look at the application here, if I move my username box here to here, the test will still work. It's looking at the object model, and that's what if you look at the object spy here, this whole copy model actually copies all the items from there. So again, you can see here for my window, my browser window, all the different items on that, the different properties of that control.
And I suppose it picks up whatever framework is available. So for web application, it'd be using the DOM as its primary framework, or for Windows application, it'd be using WMI.
Yep, exactly. And again, with kind of the UI spy, you can change the code generation settings as well, to kind of use the driver, or as it says, use the process variable, or use the main page itself. So kind of making it more faster. So again, going back to kind of building out faster quality tests as well.
Exactly.
All right, guys. Look, thank you very much for joining today. And as Dermot said, hopefully we shall see you again soon.
So
thank you very much. Have a good day now.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye now.